Yes, Sarah. Hello.
Hello, Tom. Would it be true to say then that it's such a strong habit to look to objects that the only way to break that habit is through self-inquiry, where we're turning away from all objects? We're trying to turn away from all objects in order to still the mind, essentially, to break that habit.
Kind of. So you're saying what your question is, and what you're saying is that there's a habit to go towards objects, and it's so strong that the only way to break that is to go towards the subject. Is that what you're saying? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's true, but it's one step deeper, I would suggest, than that, which is that the reason you're going towards objects is because you think you're the body-mind. In Who Am I, Bhagavan writes, he says something like, the first thought is the I thought, and all other thoughts come after that. Therefore, if you destroy the I thought, everything is destroyed, meaning all of Maya, all of ignorance is destroyed. Do you recall something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
So he says the first thought is the I thought. This means this is the I am the body identity. This is the false identity. Okay. When you believe you're a body mind, which is the I thought, the first thought. When you believe you're a body mind, then you chase objects. So then that becomes a habit. That becomes a vasana, habitual tendency to chase objects. As long as you're looking at objects, attending to objects, you're taking yourself to be a body mind, right? So the solution is to stop taking yourself as a body, not to be a body mind. And when you first start to do this, you, the body mind, try to stop taking yourself to be a body mind, which ironically reinforces that on a subtle level, that the idea you're the body mind still. It might get rid of a lot of stuff, identity with the body mind, but there's still a root identity that's still there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Bhagavan suggests that we have to still the mind and discover what we are. This is why he doesn't say, in this instance at least, he does sometimes in other places, but he doesn't say in this instance that foremost path is the path of silence or the path of stilling the mind. He always bangs on about, who am I? Doesn't he? Know who you are. Even when he says, in Who Am I, he says the purpose of all the scriptures about self-realization, the purpose is one. The purpose is to still the mind. He says this, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. Purpose of all the scriptures, all the Jnana scriptures, all the scriptures on self-knowledge and realization. Not the scriptures that tell you how to, get a good harvest and have, hundreds of cattle and wealth and good outcomes for your children and things like this. But the other scriptures that tell you about liberation, all these scriptures, the liberating scriptures, tell you just to still the mind. And then in the next line, he says, the way to still the mind is through the inquiry, who am I? And then elsewhere, he'll say, other ways to still the mind are temporary. The mind will come back again. He uses the example, I think, of breath control, pranayama. He says, if you do breath control, pranayama, then the mind will become still, But as soon as you stop doing pranayama, the mind will come back again. He says the only way to permanently still the mind, and by that he means self-realization, is through self-inquiry, which is, who am I? Why does he say that? It's because he's saying only through understanding what you are, your identity, does this Maya disappear. Shankara put it in a different way. If you read Shankara's commentaries and writing, he doesn't talk about inquiry so much. He does. He also says inquiry is the only way. But he talks about knowledge, Jnana. Jnanam means knowledge. He says knowledge is the way, not action. He says karma is not the way. Action, karma, is not the way. He says knowledge is the way. Jnana is the way. This is like the muscle man versus the treasure chest analogies I was giving. The person who's trying to build muscles by going to the gym, they're using action. They're using, another word for action is work. They're using work to produce an effect. The effect that's produced through karma or action is time bound. You go to the gym, you get big muscles. You stop going to the gym, the muscles deflate. Yeah, it's time. You get the results of cause and effect are also temporary. Whereas knowledge is like discovering something that is already true. Like the treasure chest is there. Now, the analogy falls short because it's still an objective thing we're discovering in this analogy of treasure. But with self-knowledge, you discover your identity, what you are. You discover you're not the body. That is how you stop. Once you discover what you are, then you no longer look to objects. Because what you are is the nature of what you are is incomparable bliss. So you never look towards an object for happiness ever again. Other people might see a body-mind called Tom or Ramana looking towards objects for happiness, but that's not you. Inwardly, that is not the perspective anymore. Does that make sense? So the key is knowledge. Shankara always says the key is knowledge, meaning self-knowledge. Bhagavan, Ramana says, the key is the path, who am I? Know what you are. Know the knower, seek the seer, seek the subject. Have I confused you? Does that make sense? Sam?
Can you see that? I think I'm slightly confused. So what did you say earlier? Is it stilling the mind comes after? So the way to still the mind is by inquiring, who am I? Is that right?
Yes. Yes, but that is what I said. But there's a sort of, to know who you are, you have to still the mind. Okay. Only the still mind, for most, will be able to fruitfully engage with self-inquiry. Only a very pure, quiet, sattvic mind, in general, can do self-inquiry. There may be some exceptions. Okay? So you can still the mind by doing a whole range of things. to still the mind. Whole range of practices, object-based practices, pranayama, mantras, hatha yoga, physical yoga, chanting.
But they're temporary.
But they will lead to stillness of mind, but temporary stillness of mind. But in that temporary stillness of mind, you can discover what you are. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And only that discovery of what you are will lead to Manonasa, which is destruction of ignorance, destruction of mind. Does that make sense? Are you sure?
Yeah.
When you chant a mantra or follow the breath, that's karma, that's action. So when you're going towards objects, when you're doing something on objects, that's called karma. And Shankara was saying, this does not liberate. Shankara says karma, doing things in the world, does not lead to liberation because the results of karma are themselves temporary. Make sense? Mm-hmm. In Upadesha Saram, which Ramana wrote, the 30 verses on the essence of instruction, essence of spiritual instruction. Upadesha Saram, I think it's verse 2 that summarizes this idea. I think it's verse 2. It might be. Yeah, I think it's verse 2. You can check. But basically, the idea is that actions will only lead to limit. Actions themselves are limited, and they will only lead to a limited result. No action, no limited action can lead to something unlimited. You see, this is the logic he gives. So when you do breath control and stuff, it's karma, but it's good. It purifies the mind, which is and what Shankara points out is the best karma can do, any kind of action. The best you can do with karma is to purify the mind. It's the pure mind that can then discover what it is. That's the essence of inquiry. It's to discover what you are. That's why Bhagavan called it, who am I? Because he's telling you, you need to discover what you are. Not from a book. But you need to discover what you are. Not as a body-mind. And it's not the body-mind that discovers it. You are pure consciousness, pure beingness. You need to discover that for yourself. And it's not discovered with the mind. The self-knowledge is not in the mind. Does this make sense? So now, if I ask you the question, Sarah, that you asked me at the beginning, I just want to check your understanding. So you said to me, do we turn away? There's this habitual tendency to always attend to objects. So your question to me was, do we have to turn away from the objects to break the habitual tendency? Yeah. What would you say to that now?
Yes. Yes, we do. And those things that Ramana talks about as aids to self-inquiry are aids to self-inquiry. They're worth doing, because I think when my mind gets confused sometimes is thinking that because they aren't the ultimate, they're not going to give the ultimate liberation, then do I do that or do I not do it?
Yeah. And the answer is what?
But the answer is absolutely yes.
Absolutely yes, yes, yes. For most people, that is the most important part of the path. If you imagine the path like a timeline, say this is when your spiritual journey started. It could be this life, or it could be like hundreds of lifetimes ago. Your spiritual journey started here. And this is where your spiritual journey ends, liberation. Okay. So you've got a timeline. The first, like, say this is, I don't know, let's just say, give a round number. Say this is 1,000 years. I don't know, just being fanciful here, okay? This is 1,000 years. The first 999 years will be karma. Karma means aids to self-inquiry. Sattvic diet, being a good person, praying, guru bhakti, bhakti to God, surrender, chanting, reading scriptures, watching YouTube videos, coming to satsang, meditation, pranayama, working through all your rajas and tamas, getting rid of your rajas, getting rid of your tamas, becoming more sattvic. First 999 years. And that remaining 1 year, probably, all of the days in the year, apart from the 31st of December. 364 days, if it's not a leap year. That will also all be purification. And then on that last day, your mind is like your mind, which was once like a turbulent ocean, full of choppy waters and waves, is now like a pure, pristine lake, cleanly reflecting anything that's shown towards it. And now you turn within and you realize what you are. If you read some of Shankara's works, often at the beginning of his works, he'll say this text is for somebody who has already purified their mind, who is no longer looking towards objects. And he will list a few things. At the beginning of a lot of Advaita Vedanta texts, it says this. A classic one is a short text called Atma Bodha, which means self-knowledge. Bodha it's the same root as the word Buddha, which means to know. Or to be aware of. The word to know and to be aware of essentially has the same meaning. And to be conscious of. So Atma Bodha means self-knowledge. And in the beginning of this text, Shankara says, this text is for those people who've already totally and utterly and completely purified their minds, who are not interested in worldly pleasures anymore. This text is for them to attain liberation. So traditionally, this was only taught to people who have undergone great austerities, tapas, already. Otherwise, it leads to frustration. So these auxiliaries are very important, but they're nothing without, they're like building the fuse wire. And then self-inquiry is like the match that lights the fuse wire, and then kaboom. You need the fuse wire. Very important. You need to lay the dynamite in the right place. You need to get that fuse wire out. But it's nothing without the flame of self-inquiry, which really is the most important. You could say it's the most important thing. They're both the most important. You need them both. These are the two wings of the teaching. The two wings because you need them both. You will know which part you need to work on, because when you're looking within, you'll see, oh, I want to be still. This means you're still purifying the mind. And then when the mind has reached a degree of calm and stillness, you'll say, who am I? And my sense is most people don't really want to know who they are. Most people want peace. But when you've had some peace, when you've had a lot of peace, then you start to want to know who you are. A lot of people say they want to know who they are because they've read it in the book. or they've heard it from someone like me that says, oh, you have to know who you are. But you don't really want to know who you are. You maybe you begrudgingly do it or something. I don't know. Is this right? I don't know. Is what I'm saying true? It's sometimes the sense I get. So do what's right for you. Go for the pure mind. And then you can light the fuse of self-inquiry. Make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's tempting. The mind wants to jump ahead and just go to the end. My mind does, anyway.
Well, it makes sense, because if someone says, I can see your hand raised, Asana, we'll come to you next. It makes sense, because if someone says, look, self-inquiry is the way, then obviously people go, well, I want to do that then. But I think for most, unless the mind is calm, and self-inquiry will calm the mind, but unless the mind's very, very calm, it won't be fruitful. There may be some exceptions. Maybe you're one of those exceptions. Who knows? But if you look within, if you feel what is right for you, you'll see what you want to do. Do you feel like you want to become sattvic, which is pure, peaceful mind, which is karma? Meditate. Watch the breath. Guru bhakti. Surrender to God. Is that what you want to do in your heart? If so, do it. This means you are purification. You're doing purification, karma. It's necessary to do this for liberation, but it is not the final step. If liberation, instead of it being a timeline, if it's now like a staircase, that final step is self-inquiry, and everything else is preparation for self-inquiry. You need to walk up the first, if there are 100 steps, you've got to walk up the first 99 before you can do 100. This is the way it is for most people, I think.